What is going on, fight fans? So today we are going to do something, I think this is unique. I think no one has done this, but we're going to look at Fight Night Champions IGN review. And the reason I want to look at this is because with time, things change, right? When we experience the game, I know me and you have probably played this game 100 times more than IGN when they reviewed the game, right? Because they probably got a review copy maybe a week in advance, maybe a month in advance at the most, and we're able to play with a little bit with it. But I want to see, what do they say and what is the general consensus of it, and how do I specifically feel about Fight Night Champion even after after all of the stuff, after playing it for so many years, right? All right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into that video. And I'll be probably pausing a few times here.
When you're on top, it's easy to get complacent, and Fight Night has been on top for a very long time. But Fight Night Champion doesn't do any laurel resting this year. No sir, it brings some tweaks to controls, improved facial damage, and an inspiring story mode. Even though it fails to connect on all its punches, Fight Night Champion comes out swinging.
Oh, and there you go!
Now that's interesting. They talk about the facial damage, the facial deformation. I still think that from the games that have released, right, from the combat games that have released, I still think that Fight Night, in terms of the facial damage and the brutality and the deformation and everything like that, I still think that they are pretty much the leading guys. Even if you look at the UFC games who have come out after them and made by the same people, I think the way they did it, there was a violence attached to it. This is actually one of the only combat sports games that I can remember, unless I'm wrong with the UFC games, that was rated M for mature. And I think a lot of that tied into the story and how they wanted to depict the storyline and all that stuff. But they are for sure one of the best, or so far one of the best that I've seen in the face deformation, in terms of how it vibrates off the punch and then the damage that you see on the fighters themselves.
Fight Night Champion shows the brutal price boxers pay for stepping into the ring. You can practically see the imprint of the glove on someone's face when you tag them. You can tell the severity of a cut on the...
Yeah, see, look at that. Like, granted, the graphics are not to the level of what we would see now, right? But they, first of all, at the time, the graphics were way, way ahead of their time. And usually, I always remember the Fight Night games being the staple for graphics, because they would always have the better graphics over everybody else. But even without just the brutality of how his eyes are closed, the blood being literally everywhere. It's on his neck, it's on his chest. Man, this is crazy.
Cheek just by looking. There are scrapes, and then there are gashes. And once the blood starts flowing, you'll know.
Yeah, look
all over the ring.
Look at that, all over the ring, all over the floor and everything.
And Roberto Duran's trunks. This is the real win for Fight Night Champion. A lot of the other elements, ring entrances, the overdone commentary from Joe Tessitore and Teddy Atlas, are nothing special. The blood, the damage, that's maybe as good as it will ever get. Those damaged faces add a bit of humanity to what has long been a bit of a soulless series. It's the perfect time to add that bit of personal touch, because it plays out well in the big new addition to Fight Night. A story. Champion mode has you living out the rise and fall and rebirth of fictional boxer Andre Bishop. Just about every boxing movie cliche is thrown in, and yet the story is incredibly compelling.
This is one of the things that people loved a lot about Fight Night Champion. And one thing that I do think made it cool was that it was innovative, right? Fight Night Champion's story mode, or champion mode, or whatever it was called, was actually somewhat innovative in sports games, right? They were the first ones to do a narrative story inside of a sports game, and it opened the door for a lot of other, like FIFA and all these different, even for NBA 2K to do their, my player storylines and all that stuff. But this was the first start of that. So if anyone goes back and plays it, I don't think it's that big of a deal. If you play it now for the first time is not that big of a deal, but people forget how innovative it was at the time when they did do this story mode. But I do remember playing it and not getting too much out of it. Like, yeah, it's cool or whatever, but I didn't get like a feeling of like, this is so amazing, like this or this was a make or break, thank you for this story mode, like, oh my god. But I also come into these Fight Night games with a mindset of competition, so it's only so much I could be playing the computer before I'm like, and you know, like I bought Fight Night and the first thing I did was go online for ranked head to head and just played. I think I must have gotten thousands and thousands of wins in just head to head ranked after all the years of playing it. Basically had to cut it off here because of the copyright, but simply this part is just how much he loves the story mode and how well it was put together in contrast to career mode.
Contrast to some of the less inspired areas, like the downright boring career mode. Despite some new flashes of inspiration, much of...
Okay, interesting. He says the career mode was boring. I think I could agree. I think the career mode in Fight Night Champion was like all of the other Fight Night games, right? There wasn't anything. It was definitely almost a carbon copy of Fight Night Round 4. The thing with Fight Night Champion and the legendary mode, I think it was called, or legend mode, is that there isn't really anything to aspire to. There isn't a difference. You're just really feeling like you're fighting people, almost like it's just a gauntlet, and then you just win this world title. And because you were middleweight, like you're just middleweight, right? I love how Boxer's Road 2 does it. It's just so open. It's just like you could do anything you want. You can move up multiple weight classes. You could become undisputed in one division and then move up and become undisputed. You could move to different countries. You could do so many different things. And I think that they would have benefited from doing something like that. But to me, it came off as like Fight Night Champion was the one where they were like, this is the story mode boxing game, and we just have to put these other things in here because if we don't have them, that's a regression, and we can't do that. So I think they weren't focused too much on improving that mode. I think they were more focused on giving us that story mode.
Fight Night Champion is the same old game with a new coat of paint. Someone had the good idea to add a story, then forgot to improve the other modes.
This dude's literally saying every time. Bro, this dude clapped him in the back of his neck. What? Whoa, he hit him with his wrist? Mike Tyson hit him with his wrist. Hold on, let's wait. And this was, my man hit him with this right here. And his neck, how he hit him with this, and his neck spun back this way. He hit him here with this, and his neck spun back this way, and his body snapped the opposite way. This is a little confusing. Oh my gosh. That's a little confusing, but
if you played past Fight Night,
it's all
be
good,
prepared
right?
For some changes. Gone is the old punching system that required complex analog stick moves. Now, every punch in the game is achieved by flicking the stick quickly in a direction. No more blisters on those fingers.
Oh, that's the full total spectrum, total fight spectrum, or total punch spectrum. So Total Punch Spectrum was introduced in Fight Night Champion. So you would have to flick, okay, you would have to flick in Fight Night Round 4. Oh, gotcha. And then here, Total Punch Spectrum, which was much better, because you want to go quick. You want to go flick, 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 flick. You don't want to go flick, hook, right hook, flick for the jab, uppercut. Like, you don't want to, no, that's so, like, your punch flow is going to be horrific. It's much better to flick, 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 flick. That was a really genius idea that they innovated on and you know, brought to the market for boxing games. It was really smart, and even combat games in general.
Also gone is the silly idea of haymakers. Instead, you get a punch modifier that can add a little zing to any punch at the cost of losing more stamina. It helped makes it feel a bit more like real boxing, a little less like a silly game.
I 100% agree. The punch modifier to make the punch just be harder was better. Granted, they didn't really give you a new animation in this. They just kind of like made the punch take longer or start up longer, so the startup is longer. But it was definitely a welcomed improvement, because the whole haymaker thing, and one of the things that I say Fight Night Champion or Fight Night Round 3 is one of my favorites, of course, but every game has its flaws. And Fight Night Round 3 was one of my favorites. It's the second best Fight Night game to me, behind Fight Night 2004. But one of the biggest issues that I hated with Fight Night Round 3 is the haymakers. I could not stand them. Believe it or not, if you see me play Fight Night, you will rarely, or Fight Night Round 3, you will rarely see me use haymakers, even though those are super highly used by most people. I use the jab, like, in that game. Probably 90% of my punches is the jab. And then I use a lot of head movement because it doesn't have head tracking, so it's easy to get away. And if you're doing a, I'm just gonna get out of the way and hit you with because depending, I could tell by what haymaker you throw how much time I have left to throw a super combination at you. But yeah, that is true, man. When they changed that, it became more, it leaned in more to feeling like you were in a boxing fight, as opposed to that you were in this like mechanical game where you go boom, like it's just, that's not boxing. Nobody's walking around with the cocked back fist ready to throw it at you, or going like this and then throwing it at you. That's a good gameplay mechanic, or maybe a fun gameplay mechanic, but it's not real life. So I think that there was a really good move for them to switch over to the way it was here. Was it not like that in round 4? For some reason, I remember it like that in round 4. I might actually do the video review that IGN did on round 4 after this, depending on how you guys receive it. If I get a bunch of likes and, you know, you guys enjoy the content, I might do it.
Blocking is somewhat automated. Instead of having to position your gloves, your fighter will always try to meet an incoming fist as long as the block button is held down. It's more about how boxers are positioned, less about your timing. And you're going to need...
So this, I disagree with the person doing the review here. He said it's more about where you're positioned and less about your timing. That's 100% false. It's all about your timing and less about understanding what punch your fighter is throwing. All you need to know is that your opponent is going to throw a punch. Is he going to throw a punch? If yes, block. That's basically it. And I did not... I'm sorry. I know a lot of people, some people like the simplicity of this. I could not stand that. I could not stand that. Just pressing a block button, what ended up and having a meter, basically you're just screaming for people to pump block, because what's the point if the meter goes back up? If I release it, I'd rather go like this, you know, when I'm in range all day, so that the meter just never goes down. I'm never gonna be like this. For what? Like, for what? You know, my meter goes down here, you're gonna be bleeding through all of my guard, my whole guard. So it became so simplified that the resolution for the simplification, because of course if it just was a force field, people would just be blocking forever. The solution for it was a block meter that I don't think was tested thoroughly enough, because if it was tested, they would see that you could just whoop, 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 whoop all day. And that's not good, man. So basically, it wasn't really about positioning, like he says, because your blocked anything anybody threw. It was all about timing. So he almost says it in reverse, in my opinion. He almost says it in reverse, but let's keep going.
That help on defense. There's no doubt that on the default difficulty, anyone can go in and swing wild and have some success. If you want Fight Night to be a brawler, you can. But even then, taking heavy shots will really cost you quickly. It's tough to survive without playing some defense. The AI is smart. In fact, smart enough that boxers feel like individuals when you face them. Ali and Tyson don't fight the same way. Ali plays with you, Tyson tries to destroy you. Fighters react...
I disagree with that as well. Right here they're saying Ali plays with you, and as they're saying Ali plays
smart
with
enough
you,
that boxers
Ali
feel like
is
individuals
just
when you
standing
face
there and punching.
Ali and Tyson don't fight the
Boom,
same way. Ali
boom,
plays with you.
Boom. He's rarely moving. at all. He's just like there. So I don't really agree. I don't really agree with his sentiment that they do different things. I do think that they have like some type of a difference, but I don't think the difference is that noticeable. But greatest of all time is not that difficult. Once you get the hang of it, there's a very readable thing about the computer that's hard to put my finger on, but it's very easy to like time your blocks, steer their punches, and do all these different things. The AI becomes very, very easy. I mean, I've beaten Mike Tyson with, Butterbean for fun on greatest of all time with sliders to make it even more difficult, improving their defensive slider and all that stuff. So I think they were good. They felt human-like, I would say, to a certain extent, but they did become predictable over time. But hey, he's only judging it by the early playthrough that he had, the first month or the first 2-3 weeks or whatever, and then he's making a review. So to be fair to him, he doesn't have years and years of like understanding the AI.
Tyson tries to destroy you. Fighters react well to situations. If you're in the 7th round and a fighter knows they're losing on points, they might become more aggressive. If cut, they are often overly protective of that side of the face. Sometimes fighters...
So how do you become overly protective of that side of the face if when you block, it just blocks everywhere? I don't know, man. Let me know in the comment section down below, guys. You guys probably know, but I don't know how. I mean, if I see a punch coming, I'm going to block and time it, and no matter where it comes, it's going to be blocked. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, since it's not a right hook, I'm not going to press the block button. I'll take the shot. Like, I don't know.
Fighters make dumb moves. Maybe that's because some fighters are just plain stupid. Maybe the AI just isn't always up to snuff. Whatever the case, you can see who wins out in the end.
He is damaged badly. Big shot he just scored with. Did you see that? I don't know that Miguel Cotto is going to be able to continue. That is a real question for him to answer as he's down again.
Fight Night Champion gets the boxing right and adds a flawed but enjoyable story mode. I've always put a lot of stock in career modes, and Legacy mode here is just downright bad. The minigames are tough and get boring fast. The entire concept just seems off base.
What did he give?
Should
8.
greatly extend Fight Night Champion's playtime, made me like the game a lot less. Avoid the career mode, enjoy the story mode, and spend a few hours creating some dream boxing matches. That will make any boxing fan happy.
And mentions nothing about the online mode, right? Like, I think that was the thing, because he just said right now, the thing that would extend this game, none of it works well, but never mentioned the online. Now, granted, he probably couldn't play the online, but I think that online, it's like a consensus almost across the board that online is the thing that keeps people attached to a game the most over anything else. So he should have mentioned, hey, even though, I haven't gotten my hands on the online, but that could be an option if you're looking to play this over the long term. He should have said something like that, but he didn't. He was just like, he almost completely acted as if online didn't exist and that all of the stuff that would create a longevity for this game were bad, which I agree. I didn't like the career mode, the story element. Even if you like it like he did, it's going to be short, so it's going to be over. And then, having your little fantasy matches, that's kind of like a niche thing, so you're not going to be doing that all the time. But online, literally, which in retrospect, looking at this, was what carried the game through the years. Now, Fight Night Champion is oddly the most played of all of the other Fight Night games, but not because it's Fight Night Champion, but simply because we haven't had anything as such a long time. So we've been playing it longer than every other game. So I'm also taking that understanding and knowing that he played it for such a short time. I played it for so many years that I have to understand he's coming from this new gameplay experience perspective, while me and you have played this for so long that there's so many nooks and crannies that we know that the online was the thing that carried this game, not any of these things here. But it's cool to see that the brutal faces was a thing that I took that for granted, to be quite honest. I didn't really, focus too much on it. Took it pretty much for granted. But Yeah, Fight Night 8. I would say it definitely deserves a 8.0, which is cool that they gave it such a good rating, or they gave it such a pinpoint rating. Some people would say that, you know, they hate Fight Night or whatever. Is Fight Night my favorite? No. Do I think it has, you know, perfect elements of boxing? Absolutely not. I don't. I think it has some elements of boxing? Yes. Is it my favorite of the series? No. I would say Fight Night 2004 is my favorite, then Fight Night Round 3, then Fight Night Round 4, then Fight Night Champions, then Fight Night Round 2. That's how I would put them in line. But all of these, they all have things that are better than their predecessors, right? So Fight Night Champion to me has a better feeling of impact with the punches, right? It's very ferocious, right? Does that necessarily mean that it's very simulation-like? No, but it does feel satisfying. Almost like when you play Street Fighter and you get like a good punch, there's a satisfaction there. Do people really punch like that? No, but you still feel that feeling of satisfaction. And I think that Fight Night Champion probably did that better than all the other ones. While the other ones had like a more airy feel, like 2004 had a more airy feel in their punches. And definitely Round 3, some of the punches just felt like it was like nothing was really happening. Fight Night Round 4 had kind of the systems of Fight Night Champion, but you could block down and up, so at least you're playing a game of, is he going to hit me to the body, is he going to hit me to the head, and it added more layers to the defense. But then the punches in Round 4 feel rubbery to me, like very, very rubbery. So it's like it doesn't feel as impactful as the punches in Fight Night Champion. So all of them have their pros and cons, and there's reasons for why one could be argued to be better than the other. But in my list, I have it 2004, Fight Night Round 3, Fight Night Round 4 Champion, and then Fight Night Round 2. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. This was kind of cool, going back towards into memory lane and looking at how somebody perceived this game in the video game industry when it was just released. Now, if they have a Round 4 one, I'm definitely going to do this depending on how many likes we get on this video. And if you guys want me to come back and keep dropping videos on these kind of, you know, things, but do it in a unique way. I feel like people just, you know, play the game. Now, let's look at the things around the Fight Night lore. All right, guys, peace out.